Hi. First off, we'd like to thank you for purchasing a Deco Motorized track. In this video, we're going to try and show you the best practices for support placement. Now, one thing to understand in all of these rods is that the motor has weight. In this situation, I'm showing you a vertical motor with a spliced track. In this situation, you have a non-spliced track with a horizontal motor. The theory between the two installations is the same. You must counter the weight of the motor with an additional support. So you will receive in your instructions a chart for bracket placement. And just note that these are inches. It's inches from the motor side and it's inches from the return side, so it's sort of a mirror image of the two. But basically, you can follow this chart. Do not get stressed out to being the exact inch or centimeter. It's always best to try and find the stud. So this is just a guide. You can move your supports over 4 or 5 inches if you get a stud. That's always best practices. So the first thing is, you will always want to get a support as close to the motor or return or the control as possible. So there goes your first support. The second support has to go within 18 inches of the end, simply because we want to counter the weight of the motor. Again, you can be off by an inch or two, it doesn't matter, as long as the first two supports counter the weight of the motor. The third support is very important. At the splice, especially if it's a one-way draw. If it's a center draw, this is not as critical. But on a one-way draw, we want to have that splice connection as tight as possible. Please understand, if your wall is not perfect, the rail will follow the wall and your rail will have to give at the weakest point, which is going to be the splice. So to counter that weakest point, we put one support as close as possible to the splice and a second support, again, as close as possible to the splice to counter any movement in the splice. Fifth support in the middle. And last support, again, as close to the return as possible. Just put that one back in there. There you go. So now you're going to have as much strength here as possible to avoid deflection, and you're going to have increased strength here to counter the weight of the motor. And yes, it's not going to be symmetrical, but that's not important because you have one in the middle and one that's close to the return edge. For a non-spliced track, it's pretty similar, except you don't have to worry about the splice. So the first support, you want to get it as close as possible to the return. The second support, you want to get it somewhere where it's going to give extra strength to the motor. Your third splice, depending on the size of the rail, you want it to go at the center point. And your fourth goes as close as possible to the return. And there you go. This is a non-spliced track. Thank you and have a great day.